Layla Benali had spent 3 years perfecting the image of the devoted Muslim wife, preparing elaborate iftar meals during Ramadan, attending women's Islamic study circles, and never missing a single community charity event at the East London Islamic Center. But on the morning of March 18, 2024, when police found her husband Yussef's lifeless body in their Canary Wharf apartment, they would discover that everything about Layla's identity was built on a foundation of lies, manipulation, and a trail of bodies that stretched across 2 continents. If you found this case as disturbing as we did, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're diving deep into one of the most shocking cases of deception and murder in London's Muslim community. And don't forget to join our channel membership for exclusive content and early access to our investigations. But let's go back to where it all began. The rain was falling steadily on the glass walls of the luxury Canary Wharf apartment building when Detective Inspector Sarah Chun received the call that would launch one of the Metropolitan Police's most complex murder investigations of the year. A 999 call had come in at 6:47 a.m. from a woman claiming she had just discovered her husband's body in their bedroom. The caller, speaking in accented English between hysterical sobs, identified herself as Layla Benali, a 29-year-old housewife who had moved to London from Morocco 3 years earlier following her arranged marriage to successful investment banker Yussef Benali. When uniformed officers arrived at the scene, they found Layla sitting in the apartment's pristine white kitchen, wearing a long black abaya and hijab, clutching prayer beads in her trembling hands. Her dark eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she repeatedly whispered verses from the Quran in Arabic while rocking back and forth in her chair. The officers noted that despite her obvious distress, Layla appeared remarkably composed for someone who had just discovered their spouse's murdered body. In the master bedroom, they found 34-year-old Yussef Benali lying face down on the imported Persian carpet, wearing silk pajamas that were now stained with blood from multiple stab wounds to his back and neck. The bedroom showed signs of a violent struggle, with overturned furniture, shattered picture frames, and blood spatter across the cream-colored walls. A kitchen knife, part of an expensive German steel set, lay beside the body, its blade covered in what would later be confirmed as the victim's blood. The crime scene immediately struck investigators as unusual. While the bedroom was in complete chaos, the rest of the apartment remained immaculate, as if someone had carefully cleaned and organized every other room before calling police. The kitchen showed no signs of the struggle that had clearly taken place just down the hallway. And even more strange, fresh tea was brewing in an ornate silver teapot on the counter, suggesting that Layla had been calmly preparing breakfast while her husband lay dead in the next room. Detective Inspector Chun, a 15-year veteran of serious crimes, had seen countless domestic murder scenes, but something about this one felt carefully orchestrated. Yussef Benali had been a rising star in London's financial district, working for a prestigious investment firm specializing in Islamic banking and Sharia-compliant investments. His colleagues described him as devoutly religious, incredibly hardworking, and completely devoted to his wife. He had met Layla through a traditional matchmaker during a business trip to Casablanca, and their whirlwind courtship had been the talk of both the London and Moroccan Muslim communities. Friends and family on both sides had celebrated the union as perfect, a successful, educated man finding his ideal partner in a beautiful, traditional woman who shared his values and faith. But as Detective Inspector Chun would soon discover, perfection in this case was nothing more than an elaborate performance that had been 3 years in the making. The investigation began with routine questioning, but Layla's responses immediately raised red flags. When asked about the previous evening, she claimed they had shared a quiet dinner at home, prayed together, and gone to bed early. However, neighbors reported hearing raised voices and what sounded like furniture being moved around well past midnight. Even more suspicious, security cameras in the building's lobby showed Layla leaving the apartment at 11:30 p.m., dressed in Western clothes rather than her usual modest Islamic dress, and returning just after 3 a.m. with a man who was not her husband. The mystery would only deepen when investigators began digging into Layla's background and discovered that the devoted Muslim wife living in London's most expensive district harbored secrets that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. The security footage from the Canary Wharf building's high-definition cameras told a story that completely contradicted everything Layla Benali had told investigators about her quiet evening at home. Detective Inspector Chun sat in the building's security office, watching the timestamp roll from 11:30 p.m. as a woman emerged from the elevator wearing tight jeans, a leather jacket, and her long black hair flowing freely down her back. The transformation was so dramatic that Chun had to rewind the footage 3 times to confirm it was the same woman who had been sitting in the kitchen hours later, covered head to toe in traditional Islamic dress, clutching prayer beads and reciting Quranic verses. The mysterious man accompanying Layla back to the building at 3:17 a.m. was tall, well-dressed, and clearly comfortable with her as they walked arm in arm through the lobby. Security cameras captured them sharing an intimate kiss before entering the elevator, and the man's face was clearly visible as he looked directly into the camera while waiting for the doors to close. Chun immediately ordered her team to run facial recognition software and circulate the image to all metropolitan police databases. What they discovered would shatter every assumption about the grieving widow upstairs. The man was identified as Marcus Sterling, a 38-year-old criminal defense attorney with offices in central London and a reputation for representing some of the city's most dangerous organized crime figures. Sterling's client list read like a who's who of London's underworld, including several individuals currently under investigation by Scotland Yard's Serious Crimes Unit. Even more disturbing, financial records showed that Sterling had been making regular cash deposits into an account linked to Layla Benali for the past 8 months, payments that totaled nearly £200,000. When investigators attempted to locate Sterling for questioning, they discovered he had boarded a flight to Dubai just 6 hours after Yussef's body was found, using a passport under a different name that suggested connections to international money laundering operations. His hasty departure was clearly not coincidental. As Chin's team dug deeper into Layla's background, the carefully constructed story of her life began to unravel like a tapestry pulled at its loose threads. The traditional matchmaker who had supposedly introduced Layla to Yussef in Casablanca claimed to have no record of arranging their meeting. More shocking still, the address Layla had provided as her family home in Morocco turned out to be a vacant lot that had been empty for over 5 years. Immigration records showed that Layla had entered the UK not from Morocco as she claimed, but from Turkey, using documentation that border officials now suspected was fraudulent. The passport she had used bore the correct name and photograph, but the issuing country's embassy had no record of ever producing such a document. Interpol was immediately contacted to investigate the possibility of international document forgery, a crime that often connected to human trafficking networks operating across Mediterranean borders. Meanwhile, forensic accountants examining Yussef and Layla's joint financial records uncovered a pattern of systematic theft that had been occurring for months. Large sums had been transferred from Yussef's investment accounts into offshore holdings that investigators couldn't immediately trace. The transfers were always made during times when Yussef was traveling for business, suggesting that Layla had somehow gained access to his professional banking credentials and was using them to steal from both him and potentially his clients. The amounts involved were staggering, totaling nearly £2.8 million over the course of 18 months. But the most chilling discovery came when investigators accessed Yussef's personal computer and found a folder marked Concerns About L, hidden deep within his encrypted files. The documents revealed that Yussef had grown increasingly suspicious of his wife's behavior over the past several months and had begun conducting his own investigation into her background. Email exchanges with a private investigator showed that Yussef had been gathering evidence of Layla's secret meetings, unexplained absences, and suspicious financial activity. The final email in the chain, sent just 2 days before his murder, contained a single line that made Chin's blood run cold. "I've confirmed everything we discussed. She's not who she says she is, and I believe my life may be in danger." The private investigator, a former Metropolitan Police detective named Robert Hayes, had apparently uncovered information so explosive that Yussef felt compelled to document everything in a safety deposit box at a Mayfair bank. When investigators obtained a warrant to access the box, they found photographs, financial documents, and a handwritten letter from Yussef addressed, "To be opened only in the event of my death." The contents would reveal that Layla Benali was not just a fraud, but potentially one of the most dangerous women in London's criminal underworld. The letter found in Yussef Benali's safety deposit box was written in his careful handwriting, dated just 3 days before his murder, and began with words that sent chills through the investigation team. If you are reading this, then Layla has succeeded in what I now believe was always her ultimate plan. Detective Inspector Chun read the letter aloud to her assembled team in the incident room, each revelation more shocking than the last. Yussef had discovered that the woman he had married was not Moroccan at all, but rather a Turkish national named Elif Kokuk, who had been wanted by Istanbul police in connection with 3 separate murders dating back 7 years. The private investigator Yussef had hired, Robert Hayes, had used his international contacts to uncover a trail of dead husbands across Europe, each one wealthy, devoutly religious, and completely unsuspecting of their wife's true nature. The pattern was always the same. Elif would assume a new identity, target a successful Muslim businessman through carefully orchestrated meetings, present herself as the perfect traditional wife, and then systematically drain their assets before staging their murder to look like either suicide or accident. What made her so dangerous was her chameleon-like ability to adapt to different cultures and languages, becoming whoever her victims needed her to be. In Istanbul, she had been Aysdemir, the devoted daughter of a conservative family who married a textile manufacturer before he mysteriously fell from his apartment balcony after signing over power of attorney to his grieving widow. In Frankfurt, she had been Zara Hassan, a Syrian refugee who married a successful restaurateur who died in what appeared to be a kitchen fire, but which investigators later suspected was arson after insurance payouts revealed she had increased his life insurance policy just weeks before his death. Each time, she had disappeared with millions in assets, leaving behind devastated families and no trace of her real identity. The most disturbing revelation in Yussef's letter was his description of the moment he realized his life was in danger. 3 nights ago, I pretended to be asleep and watched as Layla carefully measured something into my tea, he wrote. She has been slowly poisoning me with small doses of something that makes me dizzy and confused. I believe she has been testing different amounts to see what would be effective without being immediately detectable. I fear she is preparing for the final dose. Toxicology reports on Yussef's body confirmed the presence of digoxin, a heart medication that in large doses can cause cardiac arrest, but in small amounts over time can cause the exact symptoms Yussef had described. The medical examiner now suspected that while the stab wounds were the immediate cause of death, Layla had been slowly weakening her husband for weeks, possibly to make him easier to overpower during the final attack. The investigation took an international turn when Shin contacted Istanbul police and spoke with Detective Mehmet Ozkan, who had been tracking Elif Kokuk for nearly a decade. She is like smoke, Ozkan explained through a translator during their video conference. Every time we get close, she vanishes and becomes someone completely different. We believe she has killed at least 6 men, maybe more, but she is always careful to move between countries before we can build a case. Ozkan shared crime scene photographs and witness statements from the previous cases that revealed Elif's methodology in disturbing detail. She would spend months, sometimes years, building the perfect relationship while simultaneously gathering intelligence on her victims' financial assets, family connections, and business vulnerabilities. She was particularly skilled at exploiting the trust inherent in arranged marriages within conservative Muslim communities, where extensive background verification often relied on personal recommendations rather than official documentation. The break in the case came when forensic specialists examining Layla's personal belongings found a hidden compartment in her jewelry box containing multiple passports, each bearing her photograph but different names, nationalities, and background stories. Turkish, Moroccan, Syrian, Lebanese, she had documentation for at least 8 different identities, all professionally forged and complete with supporting documents like birth certificates and university degrees. But the most chilling discovery was a leather-bound journal written in Turkish, chronicling her thoughts and plans for each of her victims. The entries about Yussef revealed a calculating predator who viewed her husband not as a person, but as a business transaction. Why is becoming suspicious about the missing money? Read one entry dated just 2 weeks before the murder. Need to accelerate timeline. The Sterling connection is becoming too risky to maintain much longer. One more large transfer, and then the final phase. Detective Inspector Chan realized they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple domestic murder. This was an international criminal enterprise, and Marcus Sterling's involvement suggested connections to organized crime networks operating across multiple countries. But even as the investigation expanded, one crucial question remained unanswered. Where was Elif Kokik now, and who would be her next victim? The manhunt for Elif Kokik expanded across 3 continents when Interpol discovered she had been spotted in Dubai just days after Yussef's murder, using yet another forged passport under the name Fatima Al-Zahra. What made this sighting particularly alarming was the location where she had been photographed by airport security cameras. She was boarding a first-class flight to Montreal, Canada, where intelligence suggested she was already targeting her next victim. Detective Inspector Chin coordinated with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Dubai's Criminal Investigation Department to track Elif's movements. But what they discovered revealed the true scope of her criminal network. The Dubai connection wasn't just a transit point. Marcus Sterling had been laundering money through Dubai real estate investments for years, creating a pipeline that allowed Elif to convert her victims' stolen assets into untraceable property holdings across the Middle East. Financial investigators uncovered a web of shell companies, fake construction projects, and luxury property purchases that had been used to wash millions of dollars in stolen funds. The operation was sophisticated enough to suggest Elif wasn't working alone, but was part of a larger criminal organization specializing in what law enforcement termed Black Widow operations, systematic targeting and elimination of wealthy men through romantic manipulation. Canadian authorities moved quickly when they identified Elif's likely target, Dr. Hassan Al-Rashid, a 42-year-old cardiac surgeon and widower living in Montreal's affluent Westmount district. Dr. Al-Rashid had recently joined a high-end Muslim matrimonial service catering to successful professionals seeking traditional marriages, exactly the type of service Elif had used to identify previous victims. What made Dr. Al-Rashid particularly attractive was his recent inheritance of a medical clinic worth over $8 million following his father's death, combined with his reputation as a devoutly religious man who trusted easily and avoided the suspicious nature that might have protected other potential victims. Undercover surveillance teams watched as Elif, now calling herself Amina Boutros and claiming to be a Lebanese physician who had studied in Paris, began her calculated seduction of the unsuspecting surgeon. She had created an elaborate backstory complete with forged medical degrees, professional references, and even stage video calls with accomplices posing as family members in Beirut. Her performance was so convincing that Dr. Al-Rashid's own family welcomed her enthusiastically, praising his choice of such an educated and culturally appropriate bride. The surveillance footage was disturbing to watch as Chun observed Elif deploying the same techniques she had used on Yussef. Carefully timed shows of vulnerability, strategic displays of religious devotion, and gradual integration into her target's social and professional circles. Within 6 weeks, she had convinced Dr. Al-Rashid to propose marriage, and more alarmingly, had already gained access to his personal banking information under the pretense of combining their finances for their future life together. But this time, law enforcement was ready. Chun worked with Canadian authorities to set up an elaborate sting operation designed to catch Elif in the act, while gathering enough evidence to prosecute her for the murders across multiple jurisdictions. The plan required incredible precision. They needed to let her get close enough to Dr. Al-Rashid to demonstrate criminal intent, while ensuring his safety and gathering irrefutable proof of her identity and methods. The operation took a dangerous turn when surveillance teams noticed Elif making purchases that suggested she was preparing to accelerate her timeline. Pharmacy records showed she had been acquiring small amounts of various medications using different aliases, building up what toxicology experts believed was another slow-acting poison similar to what she had used on Yussef. Even more concerning, she had rented a storage unit where investigators found detailed architectural plans of Dr. Al-Rashid's home, medical clinic, and daily routine, along with lockpicking tools and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. The final piece of evidence came when Canadian cybercrimes specialists intercepted encrypted communications between Elif and Marcus Sterling, who was now confirmed to be coordinating the financial aspects of the operation from his Dubai hiding place. The messages revealed not only the current plan to murder Dr. Al-Rashid, but references to at least 12 other victims across Europe, North America, and the Middle East, making Elif potentially one of the most prolific serial killers in modern criminal history. As law enforcement agencies coordinated the final phase of their international sting operation, Chen realized they were racing against time to prevent another murder while building the case that would finally bring justice for all of Elif's victims. The sting operation reached its climax on a cold Montreal evening in November 2024, when Elif Kokik made what she believed would be her final move against Dr. Hassan al-Rashid. Undercover surveillance teams watched from multiple positions as she arrived at his Westmount home, carrying a bottle of expensive Lebanese wine and a small vial of liquid that toxicology experts later confirmed contained enough concentrated digitalis to kill 3 grown men. What Elif didn't know was that Dr. al-Rashid had been replaced by an undercover RCMP officer who bore a remarkable resemblance to the surgeon, while the real doctor was safely secured in protective custody miles away from the planned murder scene. Detective Inspector Chun watched the operation unfold from the mobile command center, coordinating with Canadian authorities, Dubai police, and Interpol agents positioned across 3 countries. The plan was to let Elif demonstrate clear intent to commit murder while simultaneously executing coordinated arrests of Marcus Sterling and other network associates who had been identified through months of international investigation. The surveillance footage captured every moment of Elif's final performance as the devoted fiancée preparing what she believed would be her victim's last meal. She moved through Dr. al-Rashid's kitchen with practiced efficiency, carefully measuring the poison into his wine while maintaining casual conversation about their upcoming wedding plans. Her demeanor was so calm and natural that it sent chills through the law enforcement officers watching. This was a woman who had performed this exact routine so many times that murder had become as routine as preparing dinner. The moment Elif raised the poisoned wine glass to toast their future together, tactical teams moved in from all sides. Her shock at being surrounded by armed officers was quickly replaced by the cold calculation that had served her throughout her criminal career. Even as handcuffs were placed on her wrists, she attempted to maintain her cover story, claiming she was Amina Boutros and demanding to know why she was being arrested. But her performance crumbled when Detective Inspector Chin stepped forward with photographs from the London crime scene and read her rights in both English and Turkish. The look of recognition and defeat that crossed her face was captured by surveillance cameras and would later be used as evidence in court proceedings across multiple countries. The international scope of the arrest was unprecedented in modern criminal history. In Dubai, Marcus Sterling was taken into custody while attempting to board a private jet to the Cayman Islands, his luggage containing over $3 million in cash and documents linking him to money laundering operations spanning 15 countries. In Istanbul, Turkish authorities arrested 4 individuals connected to the document forgery network that had supplied Elif with her multiple identities. In London, financial investigators froze assets worth over $12 million that had been stolen from victims across Europe and North America. The full extent of Elif's crimes emerged during months of international investigation that followed her arrest. DNA evidence linked her to crime scenes in 7 countries, while financial records revealed she had systematically murdered at least 14 men over an 8-year period, stealing a combined total of over $45 million in assets. Each victim had been carefully selected for their wealth, religious devotion, and social isolation, factors that made them ideal targets for her marriage-based confidence schemes. The psychological profile developed by criminal experts painted a picture of a woman who viewed relationships purely as business transactions and human life as expendable in pursuit of financial gain. Prison interviews revealed no remorse for her actions, only frustration at being caught before she could complete what she described as her retirement plan of accumulating $50 million before disappearing permanently. The trial became an international sensation, with victims' families from multiple countries testifying about the devastating impact of Elif's crimes. Yussef's parents traveled from Morocco to London to see their son's killer face justice, while Dr. al-Rashid spoke about the psychological trauma of discovering how close he had come to becoming another victim. In March 2025, Elif Kokik was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole in the UK, with additional sentences pending in Turkey, Germany, and Canada. Marcus Sterling received 25 years for money laundering and conspiracy to commit murder, while other network associates received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The case led to significant changes in international marriage verification procedures and increased cooperation between law enforcement agencies tracking cross-border criminal networks. For Detective Inspector Chan, the successful conclusion of the investigation represented justice not just for Yussef Benali, but for all the victims whose deaths had previously gone unrecognized as murders. The woman who had perfected the art of becoming whoever her victims needed her to be would spend the rest of her life behind bars, where her talent for deception could no longer destroy innocent lives.